Chrissy Teigen, A Very Sinking Narcissist, Part 4. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. The first 3 parts I provided you with considerable evidence which demonstrates the status of Chrissy Teigen and enabled you to understand that the individual concerned is a narcissist, supported by a variety of behaviours that cover all of the various indicators that demonstrate what she is. This has been based upon the evidential analysis of her own behaviour, the things that she's said and the things that she's done. And therefore, having established that what she is, this now enables us to look at everything that she does, everything that she says, through that narcissistic lens, to enable you to, first of all, understand precisely what's going on with regard to this individual, and secondly, to extend your understanding of narcissism in action. In this part, we go to an article by people.com. We analyse what we find there. The article headlines, Chrissy Teigen says she hopes her kids recognise my evolution as she apologises for past tweets. Chrissy Teigen is opening up about what she wants her kids to take away from her public apology over her past insensitive tweets. Deflection, triangulation with her children. Her kids didn't tweet telling a 16-year-old girl to basically go and kill yourself. Her children weren't involved in telling Lindsay Lohan, you'll cut yourself more each and every time Emma Stone appears. Her children didn't engage in the assertion of control through bullying behaviour towards these particular individuals. However, given that Chrissy Teigen has a sense of entitlement, no boundary recognition, no emotional empathy for her children, and she sees them as an extension of herself, she utilises them for the further assertion of control by making it look like that she's a kind and considerate mother by saying, I want my children to take things away from my public apology. Her children are young. If I recall correctly, they're both under 10 years of age. There we are. They're 3 and 5 years old. They may not even realise what Twitter is or what social media necessarily is, and they shouldn't be burdened, of course, with adult issues by this individual. But of course, that's not going to stop her. Her narcissism drives her to assert control over other people by ensuring that she deflects from her own poor behaviour, absence of accountability, and then triangulates with her children as part of a degree of facade management to enable her to say, look, I'm going to talk about my children because I want them to learn from this. See, I am a good person because I've recognised that I have done wrong, and I want to ensure that my children have a takeaway from all of this. You shouldn't be involving your children, but your absence of boundary recognition means you can't see that, and your absence of emotional empathy also means that you're unable to see that. So you end up dragging them in. The article continues. On Monday, the Cravings author penned a blog post, and I'll be returning to said blog post because that's very much worth a breakdown, in which she further breaks her silence after apologising last month for previous bullying Courtney Stodden on social media. In the essay, I think that's stretching it rather, Teigen explains that there is simply no excuse for my past horrible tweets. Indeed, there isn't, but guess what? The hypocrite that you are, Teigen, you're going to offer lots of excuses anyway. And that I was a troll, full stop, and I am so sorry. Except you're not, because as I explained in earlier parts of this is false contrition, which is designed to assert control and to seek to preserve the residual benefits by preventing individuals from running away from you with lucrative deals, which are part of the residual benefits. The truth is, I'm no longer the person who wrote those horrible things. Yes, you are. You were a narcissist when you wrote them, and you still are. I grew up No, you didn't, but your narcissism cons you into believing that you have. Got therapy. That hasn't helped. It doesn't help narcissists. Got married. Extension of self. Facade management. Residual benefits. Had kids. Extension of self. Facade management. Residual benefits. Assertion of control. Got more therapy. Always important to get more therapy. I often think to myself when I go down to the supermarket, I'll have some therapy. Maybe I'll purchase a little more therapy. One can always have a little more therapy in one's life, can't one? Experience loss and pain. Got more therapy. Bloody hell, that therapist must be absolutely rolling in it, if of course they exist. And experience more life. And now we go to capital letters, because if you write something in capital letters, that, dear listeners, means you mean it. It's really sincere when you put it in capitals. And got more therapy. She writes, life has made me more empathetic. No, your narcissism has caused you to believe that you're more empathetic as part of an assertion of control through facade management. Teigen goes on to share what she wants her 2 kids, Miles, 3, and Luna, 5, whom she shares with husband John Legend, to learn from her public apology. What those children should be learning is, you're being used by your narcissist mother, and that will go on repeatedly, because she doesn't see you as 2 individuals in your own right. She sees you as 2 extensions of herself, which are there to cater to her prime aims. Of course, she doesn't consciously see this. This occurs in her unconscious. John tells me almost every day how much our daughter Luna reminds him of me. Grandiosity, self-absorption. Every day, I try to make sure she's all the best parts of me. Well, that's saddling yourself with an impossible task, not that you'd notice. All the things I aspire to be, all the time, but fail at sometimes. Pity play, writes Teigen. And we preach kindness to her. Self-entitlement, monologue, and Miles every chance we get. Lucky, lucky children. Will they eventually realise there is some hypocrisy there? I certainly do, but I hope they recognise my evolution. She doesn't recognise the hypocrisy. The word just trots out of her mouth, but immediately to be replaced by talking about the fact that I have evolved. Namely, I'm not really talking about my hypocrisy because I don't genuinely recognise it. Instead, it's all about me and my evolution. That's what matters more. My goal is to be so good that my kids will think this was all a fairy tale. Magical thinking, grandiosity. The mum of 2 continues. Not the fake good, the good that has the best intentions, the good who wakes up wanting to make her friends, family, her team, and fans as happy as possible. Okay, so this is how you wake up every day, is it, Chrissy Teigen? I want to make my friends, my family, my team, and my fans as happy as possible. So what I'll do is I'll spend my time going on social media encouraging a 16-year-old girl to kill herself. I'll get into repeated Twitter spats with people calling them names and engaging in not just unpleasant, but downright despicable behaviour, because that's all about making people happy, isn't it? I'm making them happy by saying, you keep cutting yourself every time Emma Stone appears. Tick, yes, I've made Lindsay Lohan happy. And I've made you, Stodden, happy by encouraging you to kill yourself. And you, 8-year-old girl, I've made you happy by insulting you also. There we are. I'm spreading all of the happiness. More hypocrisy. The article continues with Teigen's self-indulgent hogwash. The good who will still fuck up in front of the world, but rarely. Well, you do it repeatedly, but you don't care because it's all part of your narcissism and the assertion of control, and never not growing only more good from it. If you have chuck buckets to hand, use them now. Teigen adds, I'm going to keep working to be the best version of myself. Typical narcissistic twaddle. The best version of myself. You are who you are. That phrase has been dreamt up by a narcissist as part of grandiosity and magical thinking, and then unfortunately it enters into the mainstream as people think, ooh, that sounds like a good endeavour, that sounds like a sensible thing to say, a little bit like that moronic phrase, living your best life. I'm going to keep working to be the best version of myself for everyone. Everyone deserves better, even my detractors, false compassion. And better is what you can expect from me, promised change. The world needs more kindness and love, grandiosity, and I want to contribute to it, grandiosity. I've been on a path of self-improvement for the past decade. Ha ha ha! Really? You don't know self-improvement, Chrissy Teigen, if it came up and inserted itself into you rectally, wriggled round inside, and popped out of your mouth, slapping those rather large cheeks of yours back and forth. And that path is going to continue. Promise change. Teigen told People in April how Luna is exactly like Mum. Extension of self, ownership, entitlement, lack of boundary recognition. She is a bit of a perfectionist, which I didn't know I was until the past few years. Grandiosity, said Teigen at the time. I'm trying to tell her that that's not everything. It's funny, because when I talk to her, I'm actually talking to myself too. Mirroring, extension of self. Not everything has to be perfect, and there is joy and beauty in imperfections. And don't be so hard on yourself. And that's me talking to myself when I tell her that stuff. Again, her narcissism causes her to be so up herself, she doesn't realise how ridiculous and conceited and self-absorbed all of that sounds. She thinks that she's being meaningful, that she's being open and honest. She's not. She's asserting control through such an assumption, and that assertion is being made to assert control over the listener, to indirectly control those who read and have to tolerate this utter drivel, and, of course, to assert control over a daughter. I'm an open, free spirit, and I love kids to be kids, Teigen added of her parenting outlook. For us, kindness is such a big thing. Really, that should be obvious. You shouldn't need to speak about it, but the fact that you do demonstrates that you don't actually offer it, because typically, as per the narcissist, what you're doing is you talk a good game, but you don't do the good game. When you meet our kids, they're very warm and friendly. I'm sure they're lovely children. Not as a consequence of your involvement, Teigen. You instill those things in them, grandiosity, extension of self, but for the most part, let them be creative and wondrous and spirited and curious beings, grandiosity. This is an individual who has written savage, unpleasant, despicable tweets, bullying people online, not once, but over and over again. And rather than apologise and correct her behaviour and shut up about it, as a typical narcissist, all she can do is wank on about how wonderful a mother she is, how wonderful her kids are, and that she wants them to learn from her mistake. She drags her children, who are just 3 and 5 years old, into her clusterfuck of a behaviour without any due consideration for how that impacts upon them, because she has no boundary recognition and no emotional empathy. She utilises them as the appliances that she unconsciously sees them as a method of deflection and triangulation. And it just goes to underline, once more, her credentials as a narcissist. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening. In part 5, we are going to take a little journey over to Chrissy Teigen's blog and to have a look at her mea culpa moment, her confession, her moment of absolution and apparent apology, and we're going to dissect it for what it really is. You will need 2 things for the purposes of listening to that analysis. On your left-hand side, a chuck bucket, because you may well want to vomit at the sheer odious nature of her self-absorption, and also a handkerchief to dry your eyes, because you are about to be further entertained. Join me in part 5.